The morning sun tried to push through thick gray clouds hanging over London. The city felt cold and silent, like it was holding its breath. Inside Kensington Palace, the halls were quiet. Staff members walked carefully, speaking only in whispers. They were all preparing for one of the most emotional days the royal family would ever face. Upstairs, Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood in front of her mirror. Her heart was heavy. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for a black dress hanging. On the door, she had chosen it 3 days ago. But now she wondered, was it the right one? Was it enough to show the sadness she carried inside? Today was not a normal royal event. It was not a celebration or a grand dinner. It was a day of mourning. The whole nation would watch her, looking for comfort, looking for strength. There was a soft knock on the door. Her laddie-in-waiting entered quietly, holding a small velvet box. Inside was an old pearl brooch that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth. Catherine had worn it only a few times before, but today felt different. Today it seemed heavier, as if it carried the weight of history, of duty, and of deep grief. Downstairs, Prince William sat alone in his study. He stared at the speech he had written, as the words no longer made sense. He had rewritten them many times, trying to say what needed to be said. But how could words ever be enough on a day like this? His uniform hung on the door. It was pressed and ready, but he could not bring himself to wear it yet, not while he still had these quiet moments. Not while he was still just William's husband and a father, about to face a day that no royal training could prepare him for, the tragedy that brought them. Here it happened 2 weeks earlier. It was sudden, shocking, and heartbreaking. Many lives were lost, including children. The nation had been shaken. The people of Britain were grieving together. And now it was time for the royal family to stand with them, to honor those lost, and to give the country hope. Catherine thought back to the night she first heard the news. She had been reading bedtime stories to Princess Charlotte when William's phone rang. She could hear his voice change. His tone grew quiet and serious. When he came into the room, his face was pale. His eyes showed a sadness she had never seen before. The next days passed in a blur: meetings, phone calls, planning for the memorial. But William and Catherine both knew it was important to visit. Some of the families in private before standing in front of the world. Those visits would stay in their hearts forever. Catherine remembered visiting a mother named Sarah. Sarah's 15-year-old son had died in the tragedy. His room was untouched. His school bag still sat by the door. His muddy football boots were by the bed. Sarah showed Catherine a drawing her son had made of the royal family for school. It was so sweet and innocent. William's crown was too big. Catherine was drawn with flowers all around her. That small, happy picture broke her heart. William had his own painful moments. A grandfather told him about his granddaughter's dream of becoming a vet. She had been saving coins in a jar to buy her school books. The old man pressed the jar into William's hands, asking him to give it to a charity for animals. William had to step away to gather himself. The sadness of these stories weighed on them both. Now the day of the public memorial had come. Catherine pinned the pearl brooch to her dress. It felt so heavy. She carefully put on her makeup. She knew every camera would capture her face. Every person watching would look to her for strength and for humanity. William appeared upstairs. His uniform was on now. His medals shone, but Catherine could see the tiredness in his eyes. They had spoken late into the night about how to stay strong today. The country needed to see their courage. But the country also needed to see their real hearts. Their children would not attend the ceremony. George had asked many questions about why his parents were so sad. Charlotte had drawn a picture of a rainbow and told Catherine to take it along. It helped cheer up the people there. Outside, thousands of flowers had already been placed at the memorial. The palace staff had planned everything carefully. The streets would be full of people. The whole nation would be watching. Catherine took one last look in the mirror. A future queen stared back, one learning how to carry the weight of a nation's grief. William stood beside her and gently took her hand. The car waited outside. The drive to the memorial would be 20 long minutes. The streets would be lined with silent crowds. Catherine knew when they stepped out of that car, everything would change. They would face the nation. They would carry not only their own grief, but the sadness of millions of people looking to them for hope. The official car moved slowly through the streets of London. On both sides of the road, thousands of people stood in complete silence. It was a silence that seemed to press in from all directions. Catherine sat close to the window, her eyes scanning. The faces, some held small flags, some clutched flowers or photographs of their lost loved ones. But what struck her most was their stillness. Even the usual city noises, traffic, voices, footsteps had faded. London itself seemed to be holding its breath. Beside her, William sat stiffly, hands clasped tightly in his lap. In the distance, he could see the memorial site growing larger. Television cameras were already in place. He knew that millions of people across Britain and around the world were watching. The weight of this moment felt heavier than any royal duty or military mission. This wasn't about protocol. This was about human sorrow, raw and deep. As the car turned the final corner, Catherine saw the rows of chairs arranged at the memorial site. In the front row sat the families of the victims. Some were holding hands, others sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the simple black marble memorial. Catherine's stomach tightened. She recognized some faces from their private visits. There was Sarah, the mother who had shown her the drawing of the royal family. It was the old grandfather who had handed William the jar of coins. Catherine wondered if they could still feel the support she and William had tried to give. The car came to a stop. Catherine's heart pounded. She could feel the eyes of the world beyond the car window. William gave her hand a gentle squeeze. No words were needed between them. They had prepared for this moment as best they could. But no amount of preparation could fully shield them from the flood of emotion waiting outside. William stepped out first, as protocol required. A hush fell over the crowd. There was no cheering, no applauding, the deep quiet of shared grief. Cameras clicked softly. William reached back to help Catherine from the car. As she stepped onto the red carpet, a cool breeze caught her black dress. The pearl brooch on her lapel seemed almost too heavy now, a reminder of duty and legacy. They began walking slowly toward their seats. Catherine noticed the faces in the crowd, many tear-streaked, some pale with sorrow. A young girl caught her eye. The child held up a crayon drawing of stick figures under a rainbow, with the words "Thank you" written in shaky letters. Catherine's throat tightened. It a silent promise to speak with the child after the ceremony if possible. William walked beside her, his face composed but his heart heavy. He had stood at many official ceremonies, but never one like this. The randomness of the tragedy, the innocent lives lost in a single, senseless act was almost too much to bear. As they reached their seats, Catherine caught her first close look at the memorial itself. Simple, powerful structure. The names of the victims were engraved in black marble. Around the base were fresh flowers and personal items, teddy bears, scarves, framed photos. A small teddy bear with worn fur caught her eye. It must have belonged to one of the child victims. Catherine felt her breath catch. They sat down carefully. Catherine smoothed her dress and glanced at the family seated just ahead. A father held his daughter's favorite book. A mother wore her son's school scarf. The rawness of their grief hung in the air like a storm cloud. Catherine thought of her own children at home, safe and unaware of the full weight of this tragedy. She wondered how the parents here found the strength to face each day. Nearby, children's choir was preparing to sing. The children were the same ages as many of the victims. Their small voices, innocent and pure, would soon fill the air with music. Catherine admired their bravery. She hoped they wouldn't be too shaken by the sorrow surrounding them. William noticed how Catherine was absorbing every detail, every emotion. He admired her for it. She had a way of connecting with people that went beyond words. And today, that gift mattered more than ever. In the media section, the photographers and reporters behaved with unusual respect. No pushing, no loud whispers. They, too, seemed to understand the weight of this moment. The morning sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the memorial. Catherine took it as a small sign of hope. Amidst all this pain, there was still light, still unity. William glanced at his watch. The ceremony was about to begin. He took a deep breath and reached once more for Catherine's hand. Together, they would face what came next, with hearts full of sorrow, yet determined to offer the nation comfort and strength. A single deep bell rang across the memorial site. Sound was long and slow, cutting through the air. With each toll, it felt as though the sadness in every heart grew heavier. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. The sound of the bell seemed to echo her own feelings, deep, painful, possible to ignore. When the bell stopped, the master of ceremonies stepped forward. His voice was gentle, but steady. He welcomed the families, the public, and the royal couple. Catherine watched him carefully. His calm words seemed to bring a small sense of order to the grief that hung thick in the air. Then the names of the victims began to be read aloud, one by one, slowly, carefully. With each name, Catherine felt a new wave of sadness. The names were not just words. Each name belonged to a person, a life full of hopes, dreams, and love now lost. Some names were of children far too young. Some were of mothers, fathers, grandparents. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked them away, but the lump in her throat remained. Beside her, William sat still. His face was strong, but inside he was struggling. He thought of the faces he had seen during those private visits. He thought of the grandfather who had given him the jar of coins. He remembered the mother who couldn't stop crying as she showed him her son's empty room. William's chest felt tight. Every name spoken today was a name of someone. His family would never be the same again. The choir of children began to sing. Their small, sweet voices rose into the sky. The song was soft and full of sorrow. Catherine watched the children carefully. Some looked nervous. Few stole glances at the grieving families. Their young faces reminded her again of her own children at home. How would she explain this day? To them? How could anyone explain such sadness? The song ended, and the crowd remained silent. No one clapped. No one moved. The silence itself felt sacred. Now it was William's turn to speak. Catherine glanced at him, her heart full of worry. She knew how hard he had worked on his words. She also knew how deeply he felt this loss. As he rose and walked slowly to the podium, Catherine silently prayed that he would find the strength to get through it. William stood tall before the microphone. For a moment he looked out at the sea of faces, the families of the victims, the public, the press, his own wife seated just a few feet away, all watching, all hoping for words that would bring comfort. He began to speak. His voice was steady but low. He spoke about the tragedy, about the lives lost, about the deep sadness shared by the entire nation. He spoke not as a prince, but as a husband, a father, fellow human being. When he spoke of the children who had died, his voice broke slightly. The crowd noticed. William paused, took a breath, and continued. Catherine's heart ached for him. He was trying so hard to stay strong for her, for the families, for everyone watching. His words touched everyone present. Some in the crowd began to cry softly. Catherine saw Sarah, the mother who had lost her teenage son, quietly weeping into a handkerchief. The old grandfather wiped his eyes with shaking hands. Even the reporters behind their cameras looked moved. When William finished, he returned to his seat beside Catherine. His hands trembled slightly. Catherine reached out and held his hand tightly. No words passed between them, but he felt her support. They were in this moment together. The ceremony continued with a moment of silence. The entire memorial site fell, completely still. Even the wind seemed to stop. Catherine bowed her head. In her mind, she thought of each name, each family, each life now gone. The silence stretched on, deep and powerful. As the silence ended, a small girl from the crowd quietly approached the memorial. It was the same young girl Catherine had noticed earlier, the one with the crayon drawing, without saying a word. The child placed her drawing at the base of the memorial. The simple act brought fresh tears to Catherine's eyes. In that one small gesture, there was so much love, so much innocence, so much hope. Catherine squeezed William's hand. The ceremony was almost over, but the emotions of the day would stay with them forever. The ceremony was coming to an end, but the air still felt heavy. No one rushed to leave. No one wanted to break the silence. It was as if time itself had slowed, giving everyone a few more moments to remember, to grieve. Catherine sat quietly beside William, her hand still holding his. She could feel the coldness of the pearl brooch against her skin, a sharp reminder of the day's weight. Her heart was full of so many emotions: sadness for the lives lost, compassion for the grieving families, worry for her husband beside her, and a deep sense of duty. She knew this day would remain with them both for the rest of their lives. Master of Ceremonies invited the royal couple and other guests to approach the memorial and lay wreaths of flowers. Catherine's breath caught. She and William had talked about this moment the night before. It would be the hardest part to walk in front of everyone, knowing all eyes would be on them, and to stand before the names of so many lost lives. William rose first, and Catherine followed. Together, step by slow step, they moved toward the black marble memorial. The crowd watched in deep silence. The sound of their footsteps on the stone path seemed loud in the quiet morning. As they reached the memorial, Catherine's eyes swept over the names again. Each letter carved deep into the stone held a story, a person, a family, forever changed. Her chest ached. William bent slightly, placing a wreath of white flowers at the base of the memorial. His hands moved gently as though handling something fragile. Catherine stepped forward with her own wreath, a simple arrangement of white lilies and rosemary. She placed it carefully next to William's, her fingers lingering for a brief moment on the cold stone. Then quietly, she reached into her handbag and pulled out the folded rainbow drawing Charlotte had made. Without hesitation, Catherine laid the small picture among the wreaths and flowers. It was a gift from her daughter, but it now belonged here, among the memories of so many lost. William glanced at the drawing, his throat tightening. The simple crayon lines seemed to carry more meaning than any words. Hope, love, innocence, even. In such a dark moment, this tiny bit of color spoke of life. Together, they stood for a long moment, heads bowed in deep respect. Around them, the families of the victims wept softly. The small girl with the first rainbow drawing stood near her mother, watching. Her eyes met Catherine's for a brief second. No words were needed. A shared look of understanding passed between them. As they returned to their seats, the choir began to sing again, this time a hopeful song. The notes rose softly into the air, wrapping around the sorrowful crowd like a gentle embrace. Catherine watched the faces of the grieving families. Some had their eyes closed, listening to the music. Some held tightly to each other. She wondered how they would face the days to come, the birthdays, the holidays, the empty chairs at dinner. Her heart broke for them. The final words of the ceremony were spoken, offering hope and strength. The Master of Ceremonies reminded everyone that, though today was filled with sadness, it was also a time to stand together, a time to remember, but also to heal. As the crowd began to stir, Catherine and William stood. There was no rush to leave. Slowly, they began to move among the families, offering quiet words, handshakes, gentle hugs. Catherine knelt beside Sarah, who still clutched a small photograph of her son. The two women spoke in soft voices. No cameras captured their words. It was a private moment, shared in deep understanding. William spoke with the old grandfather, who gripped his hand tightly. There were no royal titles here, no barriers. Just two men, standing in shared sorrow. Before leaving, Catherine found the little girl who had brought the drawing. She knelt and spoke gently, thanking her for the beautiful gift. The child smiled. Shyly, her mother wiping tears from her face. Finally, it was time to go. As Catherine and William walked back toward their car, the crowd remained silent, still watching. This had been more than just a royal appearance. It had been a day when the future king and queen showed their hearts. As the car pulled away from the memorial, Catherine leaned back in her seat. The tears she had held back now slid quietly down her face. William reached for her hand and held it tightly. Neither spoke. There were no words, just the knowledge that today, in standing with the people, in honoring the lost, they had done what truly mattered. And though the grief would remain, so would the hope that love, kindness, and unity could carry them all forward.